Salutations, Imperial citizens and battle brothers. Welcome to the last review of the upcoming or by this point released documents. This is the last one we have to talk about, and it is probably the most important because this is the one that tells us how many units and how many points each of those units are going to cost and be included in our lists. This is the new version of the MUNITORUM field manual, and Games Workshop did something pretty interesting. They just made a website for this called mfm.warhammercommunity.com/language, so in this case en, and you just click on whatever faction you're playing. For example, if you click on Tau, you can immediately get all the Tau, and this is most likely how they will be keeping an update on everything, which I really appreciate. Next, we have this little text, and it's just going to explain how many units, how many models does a unit have. So it's the starting strength. There are a new thing here, requisition thresholds, which says if you include the same unit more than once, you might pay extra points for the subsequent purchases. So, for example, I can spoil one thing: the if you take 3 ballista dreadnoughts, the third one will cost 10 points more. This is obviously made to discourage spamming the same datasheet, and it is probably a pretty good idea. Obviously, it's gonna hurt a few armies with very few datasheets, like Emperor's Children and World Eaters, but that's just kind of what it is. There's also a leader and support thing, which immediately tells you what units your leader can join. This also counts as an errata because the new ruling is if the field manual tells you something is true, then you adhere to the field manual. That's how it is. If a rule contradicts the field manual, use the field manual. And then we also have the detachments in every field manual here. And the detachments will tell you how many detachment points the detachments are. So if you build a list with 3 detachment points at 2000, you can take 1 3 or like 1 2 in a 1 or 3 1s and build your list out of that. It also says what force dispositions your detachments have, which means this will immediately tell you what primary your detachment is going to play. And then we obviously also have enhancements and upgrades and possibly unique tags which prevent certain detachments from being used together with other detachments. But without further ado, let's hit the Space Marine data slate. And there you get the same reminder text here, but that's what that is. So we are starting off with aggressors. 90 points for your first and second unit, or 180 for 6, and after that they cost more. I don't exactly know why aggressors are more expensive when spammed, because aggressors weren't exactly a popular unit, but I do think 90 points is pretty cheap. They got a lot better with their AP rule, now that their AP bonus isn't just hitting into cover all the time. And it also means the flamers are a lot more interesting now because they auto hit, so you circumvent cover completely, which is pretty good. The Ancient is now 40 points, so the Ancient dropped. It can join more or less the exact same squads, but it has the support tag. So, one thing the Ancient used to be good for is for 50 points, you can just put it as a solo model into a list and it would have been fine. You can't do that anymore because support units have to be attached to something or they can't be taken. The Ancient and Terminator armor, of course, the Apothecary also down to 40. So yeah, across the board, all of these support units are probably way cheaper than they used to be, but on the downside is you can't run them solo anymore. One notable exception is the Apothecary Biologist, which is 70 points, which is way too much in my opinion. It's support, so you can't run them solo. It's like the only second leader you can attach to a Gravis unit, and it's like, why is this guy 70 points? You don't need to be 70 points. Come on. All right, Assault Intercessor Squad. 75 and 150. 150 is cheaper, I believe. I believe that is cheaper than what it used to be. I believe the 10 man used to be more expensive, right? But that also applies to the regular intercessors, as we see down below. And important thing on assault intercessors, no cap. I don't know why you would run more than 4, but you can. Uh, Unlike the JPI went down 5 points, but if you go up to the third unit, they are up 10 points. So basically, if you run 2 units and you ran 2 units before, you are now saving yourself 10 points. But if you buy the third unit, it is now 5 points more. So you would still save 5 points in total, but that's just what it is. The Astreus is 525. If any of you have one and don't need it anymore, please mail it to me so I can use it. I'm curious if the Astreus can actually be good now, because hitting something to be -1 to hit is a lot more relevant with new cover, and all of its AP1 guns are a lot better now. So the Astreus is not a complete meme. It probably is because it can't move anywhere, but now with tow-in terrain, that kind of stuff, yeah. Ballistas Dreadnought 150 stayed the same, but the third one is going to cost you 160. So if you like the old triple Ballistas, Vindicator, and Reaper list, it's going to cost you 10 more. We have the Blade Guard Ancient for 40 points. He did not change, but I can no longer give him a better tier for being the cheapest way to fill points. And that's just what it is. Blade Guard Veteran Squad. The 6-man finally went down to 160 again. They did increase the price in the Blood Angel section for their Blade Guard Veteran Squad back to the 170, I believe. So it's not just that. So yeah, the third unit is going to be more expensive. I don't think you would play free, but Blade Guard is actually pretty interesting now because without cover modifying AP, the 4-up invuln is a lot more useful now, because if your opponent has AP2, instead of making that 0 with cover and AOC, making your invuln useless, you now just take the invuln a lot of times, even against like AP1, and that's just something that happens. Blade Guard also combo really well with Tigorius to be a really difficult to kill unit, or with the Wardens of Ultramar and Titus to be a very big unit with high OC. And of course, the new support rule also means the Blade Guard Ancient can now lead units much more easily. You don't have to run a Captain Blade Guard squad for the Ancient. You can now run Tigurius and the Blade Guard Ancient, for example. Brutalis Dreadnought 150, that one went down in points, probably to be the replacement for the Assault Centurion soon, I will imagine. And the third one costs more. I don't know what you would run free. Captain 180, same thing. Note one thing that disappeared: you don't have to be doing the thing where you need to equip a plasma pistol to join Hellblasters, or you can't have a fist with Blade Guard. That doesn't matter. You can now just join your captain and no one cares. The Gravis Captain, still 80 points, and the Gravis Captain is not a support, so you can still run a solo Gravis Captain in your good detachments with the good enhancements. Captain in Phobos armor, 70 points. He is still terrible. He can join scouts, but he could do that before, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Phobos Captain, still terrible. Though, now that the Wardens don't exist anymore, this is the cheapest way to equip your army with a redeploy, because you can now just take the scout detachment that is like 1 detachment point, and then you give him lone op, and then you have an 85-point lone op that gives you redeploys for your infantry if you really want to, now that the Wardens can't just be taken solo. Captain in Terminator armor, 85. This guy used to be 100. This is potentially pretty useful because you have the +2 charges stratagem, which you can no longer combo with a charge reroll, because you can only use 1 strat per phase. So in Librarium, in Reclamation Force, you can now give this guy the strat for +2 to charge out of Deep Strike, so it's a 7-inch, and you can reroll the charge. You don't have to spend anything; he just does it, and that's pretty cool. Also, Assault Terminators get a bit cheaper if you twiddle with the loadout a little bit. But yeah, Captain with Jump Pack, 75, so he's still 100 in Rec Force with Liberatum, which is still the only place I would play him in Ultramarines. There we go. Centurions are the same. Curiously enough, good news for Paul, they don't get more expensive if you spam them, so have fun, Paul. Take your Centurions. Chaplain is now 60 points, is a leader. Same thing as before. Note the regular chaplain has a lot more usage now with the once per game just pass a battle shock you failed and like flip it, and now that battle shock is a bit more of an inconvenience actually. Terminator Chaplain, still terrible. Chaplain on bike, also still terrible. Chaplain with jump pack. This is the new guy, but we are still using the old data sheet for those points. So until the codex releases, all the data sheets in the Armageddon box that have existing parallels, you still use the old data sheet. So this is the normal jump pack chaplain, which makes him trash. Company heroes 104. Yeah, I don't like company heroes that much, but I do think they are not the worst unit now. I actually dropped a Victrix card for heroes in one of my lists because the list plays a primary objective that benefited more from having multiple units rather than having like one big Victrix unit, so that is something I did. And yeah, company heroes, you probably won't see them all that much. I guess if you want to play with Oriel Ventress because he can no longer join Victrix card, that could be something, but yeah, let's talk about other stuff. Desolation Marines. Now, indirect fire is heavily nerfed now. You need a spotter to hit on force. You can never reroll your hits, and you can't move and fire indirect. You have to be stationary now. The thing though is 180 for the first unit. The second unit costs you 210. You still can run the 10 man, and I am so upset about that. I am so mad you still can't do the 10 man, but 180 is not completely crazy because if you think about Anvil Siege Force, for example, is effectively you can just slap the crit 5 stratagem on these guys, and because you have +1 to hit from being heavy and all of that stuff, you will hit on force basically. You ignore cover, you have +1 to hit, so no matter what rules your opponents have, if it's not lone op, you can just shell them with shots, and this would be like a pretty good clearer for infantry because you can just start spreading your indirect fire. And in Anvil Siege Force, you activate the crit 5 sustain strat, and that effectively means you hit on 2s. Now you can reroll, which would be amazing with the crits, and it was, but 180 points for a unit in your backline that will just shoot your opponent's scoring pieces if you can get a spot on them. That would be pretty neat, actually. Like just getting those 4 Sisters of Silence off of the one expansion objective, so your opponent has to expose a Custodes unit, or there's like 10 cultists somewhere, or like warp spiders. Just start shelling them. Hope you kill a few, so that the 26-inch charge is not as noticeable. Yeah. Yeah, probably not a good thing in every list, but one thing to keep in mind, the heavy keyword got a lot better now. You can now move 3 inches and still get your roll. So if you deploy your desolators behind a wall, you can now move 3 inches out and then shoot your super crack missiles with the +1 to hit. So now they basically ignore cover because you get +1 and -1, and your AP2 is a lot less of an issue. So your 4 shots with super crack, if you off the target and if you give them ignore cover maybe, and you move 3 inches out, you hit on 2s, you will wound on 3s or 4s, and then they will eat the d6 +1 damage. So it's not nothing, but yeah. Devastators, I don't care. They are out. The box knot still bad. The drop pod awful. Eliminators, they finally went down in points, down to 75. That is actually pretty decent. The only other 75-point unit is the Firestrike Servo Turret and the Suppressor Squad. You can spam Eliminators too, which is like okay. So yeah, I think in terms of like what they actually do for 75, getting a carbine and two last fuzzles isn't completely bad. It is easier to get your stationary thing now because of the fire and fade and all of that stuff. Otherwise, yeah, I don't think it's like amazing, but it's like if your list is 1925 and you don't need a third scout squad or something, you can take eliminators. It's not the worst thing. Eradicators, they stay at their discounted 90 points cost, but the third unit is gonna cost you 100 again. So if we go for a Vanguard, for example, like the classic Lannon Vanguard, which is actually interesting to look at, even though I think the new cover mechanic is actually a huge problem for it. You had one big unit of eradicators and two small ones, but now you pay less for both, but for the third one, you just take the eradicators with heavy bolters on the other side here. Just as your third unit, you will just take the other eradicator unit instead, and then you even save yourself 30 points. And don't get me wrong, I like my melter rifles, but do we really need to pay 30 points for a bunch of melters? I don't think so. So, yeah. Eradicators with heavy bolters, these are straight from the Armageddon box set. They're 70 points for free, which is outrageous. These guys are really, really good for what the cost is. You can't run them in six mans yet. That's probably something with the codex, but yeah, 70 points, perfect filler unit. They are heavy, they are sustained, so hitting on twos with sustained is not like they don't need oath necessarily. They do skirmish kind of alright. If they can get a shooting phase, they will probably beat any like 5-man infantry unit because you're shooting them 12 times, hit on twos effectively, 100% hit rate, and then wounding them on whatever, and then they have to take saves. So yeah, they probably beat up 5 assault marines or like legionnaires or mandrakes or something. They will just kill them. I'm pretty sure. Or if they don't kill them, they will kill like 4 out of 5, and then the last one is auto seed by your guys. So yeah, these guys are fine. Like if you would rather have a scout squad, sure enough. But I think 70 points is pretty good. The Firestrike servo turret, 75. Yeah, it's still not great. Obviously, it likes detachments that have assault. It didn't get more expensive. I think the last Talon got a bit better than before because it's AP free, which didn't like cover that much. And you also hit on twos natively, so freeze and cover. So it's not the end of the world to just shoot these guys. You also overwatch on fours, which is something that could come up now that rerolls aren't a thing in Overwatch. So that's what it is. The Gladiator Lancer stays at 160, but the third one is 170. I don't care what that is. I wouldn't even play one Lancer, so I don't know why they get more expensive. I think the Lancer is terrible. The Lancer really hates the new cover rules, even though the AP4 now actually punches into no invuln vehicles here, but I don't like it. The Reaper stays at 160. Makes sense to me. The third one is 170. This is relevant for Ironstorm because this is like your workhorse vehicle, so you probably don't run the third Reaper in Ironstorm if you played like an Iron Hand style super oath list. The Gladiator Valiant is 150. This one, I don't think it got worse. I don't think it got better. I think it's like the same, which is like a bit mediocre. The Haverfall Bunker is 175, and that's all I will ever say about it. Heavy Intercessors. These guys stayed the same cost, but I want to talk about these guys for a second. They have Assault and Heavy, which is pretty good. They are honestly pretty tough. Basically, cover and their old rule and stuff. It didn't really stack the way you wanted to, and they just appreciate any sort of defense. So heavy intercessors in cover, pretty good. Heavy intercessors with hidden, probably pretty good because if you put 10 of these guys into an objective, that's 20 OC, and your opponent needs to have some really crazy profile to get rid of these guys. I'm talking like a Forge Fiend, something like strength 10 +1 to wound, blast damage free. And if they don't have that, like if you shoot heavy bolters at heavy intercessors, it's not gonna do that much. Obviously, if you shoot damage 1 stuff into them, it's gonna do 0. So GSC not happy about heavy intercessors, even if they ignore cover, because all of those little shotguns were gonna do like they are like hitting 2-up saves. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, heavy intercessors. They also, you can join Codias to them if you want to go for a command point farm and a librarian unit. So for the psychic detachment. So yeah, I think heavy intercessors actually have a place now as your big expansion objective brick. Just to be an OC bomb. Obviously, the shooting got a lot better. You can now move 3 inches and get your +1 to hit. Your AP1 is a lot better than it used to be. AP1 damage 2, you can just spray something to death even if it has a 2-up save. So yeah, I like the heavy intercessors here. I think these guys have potential, especially in like the take and hold detachments. I really like them. Hellblasters. These guys didn't get worse. They didn't get better, but you don't lose full models per hazardous now. But on average, you should lose the same guys. But I know exactly that Hellblasters, they just have the same problem. They don't do enough damage, and that's like the thing. And hitting on fours is also kind of weird into cover, because if your guy dies and then shoots on death and then you hit on fours, it's like two 50-50 chances to just not do anything. Like it's I don't like it. The Impulsor stays at 80, perfectly fine. The Impulsor is pretty decent. There is a reason, because command points are so precious now. Maybe you run one with the Vox array to hopefully farm some command points. And keep in mind, transports generally are a bit worse than they used to be. So I probably wouldn't run an Impulsor spam like the old Swordbreader and Templar list anymore, but I think the Impulsor, like one Impulsor with your Captain Missile is completely fine. And then you still have a small tank with a bunch of infantry killing shots, and that's fine. Inceptor squads. These guys cost more on the third unit, and a lot more actually. Like it is 15 points extra. But the 6-inch deep strike is probably really good now, because screening for 9 is now screening for 8, which means you just don't screen that much anymore. So the 6-inch deep strike is really good. The new hazardous is amazing on the plasma. You roll 6 dice, and on average you will not lose a single model, where as before you would lose like 1 or 2 every time you activated the unit. And it's still a damage-free unit with AP3, and they're gonna shoot hard, especially with Twin Linked and Oath. I think Inceptors have some spice to them. Even like a small unit, just like a small unit with bolters, just throw that in there as like an anti-trash piece, or like an assassinate for like lone ops and stuff. Could be something. Incursor squad, these guys went up by 5 points, and that is truly a shame, because Incursors were the best unit in the Codex, excluding like chapter specific stuff. Incursors are awesome. Keep playing them. They ignore cover, and they hit something. If they hit something, you get +1 to hit. That is obviously still bananas, because first of all, the Incursors are not impaired in their own application of the buff. So something is in cover, and then you will hit it normally without the -1, and then that thing is +1, and then you just hit it normally again because you have a +1 to hit. And if you combo it with a hammer strike, obviously even better. You also have some spice going on, where you can put the Incursors into reserves and then use your scout rule to deploy them normally before the game begins. That is something I need to try more often, and I would still recommend you running Incursors in most lists that want to shoot. So if you have a Stormlands or a Iron Storm, or the double Repex Gladius, if that's still a thing, you should still run 1 or 2 Incursor squads. Don't run the third. You never wanted to run the third, but yeah, just take those 10 extra points for the 2 units and just be, you're not happy about it, but I did see where they were coming from. It was the best unit objectively. Maybe now that they're the same cost, you run 1 Incursor and 1 JPI, just to have one thing that can really threaten an expansion objective charge. Could be something. Infernus Marines went down 5, so now you can think about Infernus Marines. All the Torrent units are a lot better than they used to be because of the Overwatch penalty, so it's not crazy. This is obviously really good for Salamanders with all of their mortal wound combos, but yeah. Infiltrators went up to 110. That is a lot of points. You almost get 2 scout squads for an infiltrator squad now, which is bananas. But screening 12 is a thing, my guy. It is really, really good to screen 12 inches. You can combo it with the scout detachment where you can make 1 CP to make them unshootable, so you don't need to bring the librarian on the off chance that is relevant. So yeah, the third unit you probably never run the third. I think the only way I saw people run 3 units was if it was like a teams list that was like meant to completely counter demons and GSC. So yeah, I don't think you will see many infiltrators at 110, but I still think if you play a list that wants to fight in the center of the board, like maybe a take and hold list, you probably should consider infiltrators. Intercessor stated 80 points, pretty good. Sticky is a bit worse than it used to be because the home objective doesn't give you all that many points in the new missions, but the big unit is now 150. That is pretty interesting because with a lieutenant, you have now your lethal hit bomb for like 215. So for 240, you get the entire Gladius combo, which is like fire discipline for the lethal sustained. You get your 4 times the shots and all of that stuff. Yeah, pretty interesting. One little note about the Armageddon datasheet, which is not legal yet, but keep this in mind. The basic close combat weapon on the Armageddon datasheet have precision, and this could be an argument to run your sergeant without a melee weapon, because you just want all of the precision attacks. Because if a Phoenix Lord runs into you and you just heroic the intercessors, and your opponent has to be scared about losing their Fugen or their Lycus or something, because yeah, they have a 2-up save, but all of those ones you roll are gonna go into the Phoenix Lord, and there's nothing you can do about it. The Invader ATV stays at 60 points. They don't get more expensive, so if you want to spam 3 of them, go nuts. Obviously, still a pretty good model because it's the cheapest model. It's now even more important because it's actually the cheapest thing you can buy without breaking some sort of like leader rule or getting a character in the list. So interesting. The Invictus 125. It's garbage. The Judicia dropped down to 55 because fights first is not a relevant rule. In fact, if you have fights first on your model, sometimes you make your own fight phase worse. The Judicia is trash. Don't play him. He was trash before, but now he actually is. Land Raider 220 for the first 2, and the third one costs you 240. This is obviously pretty meaningless because instead of the third Land Raider, you would just buy a Land Raider Redeemer for 10 points more and then have a Land Raider Redeemer. There we go. Also, the Crusader is 220. The Crusader, not very playable, though keep in mind, in Anvil Siege Force, it's actually not terrible. Just to transport a big thing. Land Raider Redeemer. This one is interesting to talk about because I think the Redeemer is due for a comeback. You have a pretty big, tough target. It has a brutal overwatch if you position it anywhere near the center. You can tow into terrain to scorch something with your big flamer cannons. And yeah, it has the grenade and it has the grenade keyword. It can tank shock. It has smoke, so you are not relying on armor of contempt, and that's just pretty decent, right? The Land Speeder, a new unit here. So this is the new thing. It has like 8 wounds. It is movement 14. It has deep strike. It has a fire and fade. So if it shoots, it can move d6 inches. And it has a multi melter and missiles, and then either a flamer or a Gatling. And I would recommend you take the Gatling because it does at least like a few chip wounds into like a tank. Yeah, the Land Speeder is pretty good at 95. It's basically your opponent has to use like an anti-tank piece to get rid of it. They can't just shoot like 5 pistols at it and it will go away. So the Land Speeder is actually pretty good at bullying other midfield units on objectives. You can also deep strike turn 1 in the Fulgaris detachment, which is a Fulguris detachment. Yeah, pretty good. The third speeder goes up, so I don't think you take more than one or two. And I think two land speeders is a pretty solid to most lists. I have one on my desk right here, and I have a second one in the sprue I want to build. Librarian, 60 points. This is 5 points cheaper than it used to be, and the Librarian obviously enables all of your Librarius Conclave things if you don't want to bring Tigorius or something, or an Inquisitor, which Inquisitor is like not that impressive, but yeah, Librarian's pretty important. Carries Fusillade, carries the enhancements and stuff. Yeah. Librarian and Phobos armor. I don't think this guy is relevant because 180 for the infiltrator combo is way too much. And yep, here it says you can join a scout squad. I believe on the app that was removed, but it says here it can happen. I don't think you want to, so who cares? Librarian and Terminator armor. This is still the best leader for Terminators, and I do think pretty decent. One thing to note about librarians give you a built-in defense against psychic armies in a way that is pretty important because psychic armies, like psychic ranged attacks, ignore cover, and they also ignore minus to hit abilities. So if you have Tigorius, for example, and you get shot by Magnus, your opponent will ignore both the -1 to hit and the cover. But because Tigorius is a Psyker, a Librarian, you have a 4 Feel No Pain against Psychic attacks. So if your opponent shoots you with Psychic to circumvent your cover bonus, you get a 4 Feel No Pain, which is even better than having the -1 to hit. So pretty good. Yeah, Lieutenant, 45. Yeah, the Lieutenant got really cheap, dropped by 20 points, I believe. And is now a support. So you can't run solo lieutenants, not sure why you would, but the lieutenant can now attach with librarians. The lieutenant can attach with Titus. The lieutenant can attach with Tigorius. The lieutenant can attach with a chaplain. So now that the support thing is going, and that's just a thing, you can run lieutenant and intercessors for 195, not 210, and then for 25 get the fire discipline. So that's like 210 points, 220 points, 220 points for the whole combo. Pretty decent. I'm not gonna lie. The lieutenant in Phobos armor is down to 45. He's still terrible though. If you want to just play the poking game with your incursors, I mean it's a small little upgrade for 45. You just poke one guy out, not even more than an inch. You just poke one guy out, shoot your little gun to get the +1, and then you just move the 1 inch back because it's always 1 inch. That's what you have to plan for. The Reaver Lieutenant still makes Reavers worse than if they didn't have him. To be fair, not having the deep strike is now not as important anymore because now you just can scout and use the redeploy move and do that kind of thing. That's what it is. The lieutenant with combi weapon is now 85. That is cheaper than the 90, right? After the one nerf, or is it? No, it's still the same, right? Yeah. The lieutenant with combi weapon. Two things about him. First, lone op is not as important anymore now that we have hidden as a mechanic. But second, spotting an entire terrain feature for your reroll ones is pretty good. So I still think this guy is pretty decent. Keep in mind the reactive move was nerfed to 8 inches, just like any reactive move. Outriders are now 70 points. And they obviously scale with what you attach to them, but they don't get more expensive. Good news for White Scars, but 70 points, like I know they can't go through walls, but it's still 6 OC for 70 points. I still think that's pretty reasonable as a way to contest primary. Yeah, I think Outriders low-key pretty decent. Just be aware they will probably not kill 5 elves. You only have 12 attacks. It's not a surefire thing. Now we have a Predator Annihilator. It's still the same cost. The third one costs more. The Predator Destructor is 140, also costs more. That's just gonna shuffle some things around. The Predator Annihilator probably got better now because, again, all of the Oath of Moment units would rather have -1 to hit, then -1 AP. So now your AP 3 is actually gonna hit something, because I would rather try to hit on a 4 with a full reroll than give my opponent a better save. That's basically what it goes. Plus the ability to just get a +1 to hit or ignore cover is just pretty reasonable here. Yeah, pretty good. The Razorback, I don't care. The Redemptor Dreadnought is hilariously terrible. So a Redemptor is 195, and if you attach the plasma cannon, it's 205, which means it's the same price as it was before. But the third Redemptor costs you 210, and the plasma cannon now overheats twice as often, hitting your Redemptor for 3 mortal wounds. I think the Redemptor is garbage now. The Redemptor is now just a tough model that does 0 damage, because the plasma cannon is actively trash. Unless you're playing like Dark Angels, but I think the Redemptor is dead. I think the Redemptor is so dead. Speaking of something not dead at all, Reavers. Reavers got cheaper by 5 points because Scout, I guess. Yeah, they cause battle shocks. They reduce OC without a minimum, and yeah, and their precision is like insane now. 5 Reavers can probably kill most characters in the game. If it's not like a Gaskull or an Abaddon with like 8 wounds, you can probably kill any 6 wound character if you off it and just charge in. Yeah, I think Reavers are nuts right now. I think Reavers are pretty good. Keep Reavers in mind. I think Reavers are legit pretty decent. The Repulsor, 170 for the first. You never take more than one, let's be real. Yeah, you still get the rule that says if you get charged, you can embark and save your guys, so it's pretty good against melee. It's the only way to transport 10 models without forking over points for a Land Raider, and 170 is not that expensive for how many shots it has. Now the actual damage is a bit mediocre. It shoots about as hard as a Predator, like a bit like less hard than a Predator. It has like one twin last cannon and one last talon, and then one hunter killer missile, so it's like 3 + 1 shot at d6 something, and then you have a bunch of garbage shots with the array that are good at killing screens. So yeah, it's something. The Repulsor Executioner at 240, is that more than it used to be? I think, didn't it go from 220 to 230, so now it's even more expensive? Yeah, the Executioner is in a weird place. I would probably never even consider a plasma cannon again because of the hazardous risk. So yeah, the datasheet rule is still terrible because it still refers to less than half instead of half, like the new Battle Shock. But it still does the shooting with the oath and stuff. So I'm not gonna say that the Repulsor Executioner is still bad, but I'm not sure I would run a Repulsor Executioner list anytime soon. The Rhino is 75. No one cares. Scouts. So big important nerf. Infiltrate and Scout is now worse because if you deploy outside of your deployment zone, you can't make a Scout move. You can't finish Scout moves. That's not how that works. So in order for that to accommodate, Scouts got cheaper unless you run all 3 units. In that case, they get a bit more expensive. Scouts are insane. The new missions really, really reward you for keeping your options open into the late game whenever your opponent can't screen anymore and you just have a scout squad waiting to get that beacon and behind for like a 9-point primary swing. Pretty absurd. Yeah, I think scouts are amazing now. Scouts also have the smoke keyword, which important. Keep that in mind. If you screen one of your units with scouts and you just pop smoke, the units behind the scouts also get cover. Just something to keep in mind. Stern Guard veterans, 100 for 5 and 190 for 10. This is your Librarius combo unit. You give them Fusillade, and then you have the psychic stuff. So you do the death wounds on 5s with the full rerolls on both. Still good, probably good. People will play a lot of it. I don't know how necessary it is unless knights take completely over the game again, but this is one way to just get rid of a Catan, to be completely fair. Next, the Stormhawk Interceptor. This one is a plane, I'm pretty sure, just like the Stormtown gunship. I don't know how the new aircraft is actually gonna play out. I'm pretty curious about it. If you guys want to try out some airplanes, like some actual aircraft, please tell me how it went, because I do like the idea of just having a unit that up downs every single turn to do some shooting. Seems pretty good. The Storm Raven gunship is 280 points. That is really expensive. The second one is 300, so that Dark Angels list is probably dead. There's the thing though. I have played a bunch of games with Stormlands recently, two in total. I played two games with the new Stormlands. One was with old points, one was with current points. And I was pretty impressed by how mobile that army was at scoring the disruption primaries, and a Storm Raven in cover with -1 to hit, wound, and damage is absurdly difficult to get rid of. If your opponent does not have an ignore modifiers rule, or at least ignore cover, they will not get through this, because you have to think about this. A Custodes Caladius tank will hit you on force, wound you on force re-rolling, and then you have a 6-up save, and then you still have -1 damage. Like, on average, your opponent is gonna hit 2 shots, maybe wound both, and then you shouldn't die to that, like, at all. And it is very easy without like rerolls to just completely whiff. It is nuts. -2 to hit is insane. The Storm Speeder Hellstrike is down to 105, which is appropriate because it does 0 damage. It can spot for a +1 AP, but only against like non-vehicles, which is not where I want the AP to be. But maybe if the metagame devolves into 2-up saves, OC4 bodies on objectives, maybe you take a Hellstrike. It gets all of the little buffs from the Fulguris, but I think this is still the worst speeder by far. The Storm Speeder Hammer Strike is up to 130. It was at 125, so it got more expensive, and the third one costs you 140, so I wouldn't run free. However, you now have access to ignore cover on this thing, and this is your easiest way to ignore cover outside of the detachments that have a specific stratagem for it, like the Gladius or Blades. The Stormspeeder Hammer Strike will remain to be pretty good, especially in Fulguris, because you can turn 1 Deep Strike. If you take 2 Hammer Strikes and 2 regular Land Speeders, you are at, I think, 450. Let's say, wait, 2 of these are 260 plus 180, so it's 450. Yeah, it's 450, right? No, 440, something like that. It's a quarter of your list, more or less, for 4 vehicles, and all of them have multi-damage shooting. All of them can deep strike turn 1. That is one hell of a death drop. Like, with Oath and summoning cursors for help, you can probably kill anything in the game that's like a large target. You can probably kill a big knight with just that on turn 1. Just drop in, shoot it. Especially now that you can deep strike into melter range. So yeah, the Hammer Strike, really good. Keep playing it. The Thunder Strike, 135. This one is the one that gives you +1 to wound against vehicles and monsters. And this one, while it is mostly a unit other detachments, other chapters want to play because they don't have +1 to wound oath. The Thunder Strike is actually fine if you play a Kelgar list or like a list without Gilliman. Like, if you don't have double oath, I think the Thunder Strike is completely reasonable to take. Like, if you, like, it's only 5 points of a difference, and the Thunder Strike is the best recipient of the reroll damage and number of shots thing, because it has the D3 shots gun and all of the and the D6 +1 last talent thingy. So yeah, it's like, it's not that crazy to take a Thunder Strike and a Hammer Strike instead of taking 2 Hammer Strikes, especially in a Gladius where you already have the ignore cover stratagem. So most of the time you just put ignore cover on the Hammer Strike, and then the Hammer Strike strips cover, and then everything else can just shoot it. And the Thunder Strike still does the thing. It hits on 2s, which is good. Still mobile, still does the thing. Like it. Suppressors don't get more expensive and are 75 points. Now, suppressors I talked about this on Discord with someone, and I had to break their heart and tell them that the suppressor ability stops working as soon as the suppressors die, which is pretty easy to accomplish because it's just three Space Marines with no keywords at all. Um, a few things to consider. The suppressors have smoke. Suppressors have the smoke keyword. Suppressors have deep strike. Suppressors move 12. Suppressors have heavy to circumvent their own ballistic skill 4 because you don't want to hit on 5s into cover and then miss your thing that you wanted to tag. The thing is, even though it is so conditional, -1 to hit is a massive ability. And their AP1 is better at least. So I don't think suppressors are gonna break the game open, but I would be curious to try them. I do believe this is my 75-point unit of choice if I'd had to play Anvil Siege Force again. I would just play a bunch of suppressors and just use them to make my opponent's shooting way worse because you do have the 48-inch range, I believe, just to tag something from across the table. That's pretty good. Tactical squad, I don't care. The Tech Marine, still a leader, didn't change at all. Same as always. Gives +1 to hit, so basically ignore cover now. We couldn't do that before. Before you would hit better, but then you would bounce off of cover. So it's pretty good. On that note, also the Ballistus Dreadnought is a lot better than it used to be because hit rerolls are pretty awesome, and the Ballistus Dreadnought always had an AP problem, which is now less of a factor here. Terminator Assault Squads. You now have to pay 5 points per hammer. So 5 and a unit of 5 is 155, so it's 30 points cheaper, I believe. It was 185 before, 190 before. So I believe it works out that if you take all hammers, you pay the exact same cost as before. However, this is an interesting conversation now because you can mix your loadout, and I actually believe that is relevant. Remember my old Librarius Conclave tournament report where I took 2 claws and 3 hammers per unit just to make sure I don't get tagged and tied up by 10 cultists and then out OC'd. Because those lightning claws, they will kill the little infantry shitters without any problem. So I do actually think that because you don't always need to have 4 wounds on your guys, take the Terminator Assault Squad and just run a mix of your guys, and it would be fine. Regular Terminators drop to 160. I believe they are still garbage, so no one cares. The Thunderhawk gunship is unplayable on a reasonable board. Vanguard Veteran Squad, I will ignore this datasheet because the new Armageddon datasheet is not out yet. So this is still the old 5-1-1 lethal hits Vanguard Veteran Squad. I don't want to play them, even if they could be like fine. I just don't care. I don't buy old Vanguard Veterans. Don't buy the new ones and wait for the codex. Vindicator, the first one and second one cost the same as before. The third one costs a lot more, so just don't take the third one. The Whirlwind went down in points because indirect is bad now. Don't take the Whirlwind, especially the Whirlwind is 5 points away from a Desolation unit, which has much better direct shooting. That was the entire codex, just my little opinions for all the points. Now we just scroll down because I don't care about the other chapters. We talk about Ultramarines. So, we have Captain Titus. Captain Titus is functionally unchanged. He can lead Victrix, which makes him a conversation for the Victrix unit of your choice now. He's still the cheapest captain outside of like a no-name captain to lead Victrix guard, so that's something. Cato Sicarius is now support, can only join Victrix, so you can run him solo, which you were never gonna do. But now you can even attach like a captain or Titus to Sicarius. You don't have to attach Calgar anymore because now it just says right here it's a support, and that's the thing. Tigorius went up 20 points. He was 75 before because, as I said, Heroic Intervention is much better now. He does it for free. And -1 to hit is obviously way better than it used to be. Same with his gun. He has a 2d6 blast gun that is psychic and hits on 2. So obviously Tigori is pretty baller. in the new metagame. Expect to see Tigorius in many lists. I don't even think you have to play Librarius to make him good. Just play him in a normal Blades of Ultramar and will be fine. Marnius Calgar stays at 140. Now, this is not the Gravis Calgar. He's gone forever, but 140, staying 140, even though you get a command point every turn, is pretty nice. I do actually think Calgar is now your warlord epic hero of choice, because now we have to talk about Robute Gilliman. Gilliman is 340, basically the same as he used to be. He does the double oath. The +1 OC and reroll Battleshock aura is a bit better and also a bit worse now. You can't have OC 0 and hold a point, but you can now just pass your Battleshock because of it's easier to do, and you have to do it more frequently. Gilliman has one problem. Gilliman can't walk through walls, and in my practice games, that has been so annoying every time. I still think you can make Gilliman work. I believe it involves a list with a lot of shooting. And that, I mean, if you run the Ultramarine gun line, this is your Gilliman thing. And in those lists, I think you don't have to play a Victrix Guard unit. You probably should in like Blades or Gladius, but in my Stormlands, I actually cut Victrix for some company heroes, just to have more stuff in the list to get all of those buffs. He obviously still slaps really hard. The free strats, still good. So there's nothing wrong with him, but I really need to be able to go through walls to make him the objectively best option now. Also, because discarding cards is now a bit worse than before, having a free strat is just worse than having extra command points from Calgar. Uriel Ventress has changed a bit. He can't join Victrix Guard anymore. Now, rules is written, he can still join them because his data sheet has a rule that says he can join them. But if there's a conflict in rules, just look at what the field manual says. Also, the app says the same thing. Just wanted to mention it. So Uriel Ventress can't join Victrix anymore, which makes him a lot worse. He still gives you Deep Strike, but his 12-inch aura of Vect, which is +1 cost, is only once per game now. I think Uriel Ventress is on his way out of the codex. I think the fact that his model has disappeared from the store and that his rules just get worse, I think this is a silent, this is like quiet quitting at work. And yeah. Next we have the Victrix Honor Guard, and the Victrix Honor Guard got slapped. The first unit is cheaper than it used to be, but you now have to pay for the Blades of Honor and the Banner of Macragge. The way this works, in my opinion, is you always take the banner, so your first unit of Victrix is 230, and if you have 10 points left, take the Blades of Honor. You lose your gun, you get way better melee, you get some precision to scam some saves. It's fine. It's not the worst, and then you're back at 240. Your second unit also costs 240, which is a problem. Yeah, obviously you don't want to spend Victrix anymore because old cover was a lot better for them than new cover, and these units get pretty expensive. So maybe the triple Victrix list is just dead now. Not that it was that alive against in the Defiler meta anyway, but you know how it is. Last but not least, we have the Wardens of Ultramar. 6 models for 110, no changes, but they are support now. Now, the way works is the Wardens of Ultramar have to be attached to something. And it has to be a bodyguard unit as per the rules. Now, the app allows you to attach Titus to the Wardens without anything else and play that as a unit, and the app says it's fine. However, if we go rules as written by what the app says support units have to do, the Wardens have to be attached to something else. This changes what the Wardens do fundamentally. I believe you will not take them outside of 2 possible angles here. One, you want to build a super unit. You take Titus, the Warden, some Blade Guard, maybe Intercessors, and you just make a fat unit of many models with high OC, and you use them to bully people on objectives. And you take your -1 to wound from either blades, or preferably from the Titus detachment, and that's what that is. The other way to use them, they are a psycho unit. As long as Daniel Cornelius is alive, the guy with the staff, the unit has the psycho keyword, which means if you attach them to an intercessor squad, suddenly you have 4 extra shots and everything has reroll once to hit and wound or something. And yeah, also blade guard, you can give them the -1 to be wounded. Excuse me, the -1 strength if you get shot, something like that. So the wardens will give you the psycho keyword, which is important for the Librarius Conclave. And other than that, and the Titus unit, I don't think you run the wardens anymore. You probably don't want to attach them to like 5 assault intercessors just to have like a unit of guys that can charge. I don't think that's worth doing. So yeah, that's that. So those were all the points for all of the models. Let's quickly take a look at the detachments here. First company task force is priority assets, and it's still bad. It's 2 DP though. You can take something in addition. Anvil Siege Force is taken hold, which is like, it's okay. Anvil Siege Force has a big problem. It's 2 DP, but there isn't really any 1 DP detachment that helps Anvil Siege Force much at all. I can't think of a single thing I want to put in Anvil Siege Force. Armored Spear Tip stays at 3. Pretty popular for like tank spam stuff and with like a thing. The Bastion Task Force, 2 DP for taking hold. Spam your battle line, probably not for us. Blade of Ultramar, 3 DP for priority, and over there, Gladius Task Force, same thing. These are identical detachments pretty much. You take the one you prefer. Blades is better because the strat is cheaper and the enhancements are slightly better, but you probably won't take an enhancement. It's what it is. Priority assets is the rough one here. The old vehicle hull spam shooting list probably doesn't work with this primary because you need to do an action basically every turn in order to score priority assets, and running around with 11 units is not enough to do an action every turn. So yeah, I think the Blades of Ultramar are still good, but you need to redesign your lists. Ceramite Sentinels, this is the hot stuff right now. Also 3 points, taken hold, which is like not the best, but not the worst. And yeah, it's just the go onto the objectives, get your reroll ones. It's better than before because you can tap into terrain and see through it, but that's what it is. Firestorm is 2 points and Purge the Foe. There's one problem with Firestorm for Ultramarines, in my opinion, and that is you still don't have a way to fall back and shoot. You can get fallback and charge with Librarian, and it's actually a pretty funny idea to run this kind of list because if everything in your list is a flamer that doesn't need to hit, you can spend your Oath of Moment on your Librarian Fusillade unit and just delete something. It gives you access to Purge the Foe, which is pretty good. The Fulguris Task Force, the first 1 DP. This one gives you Disruption, which is pretty decent if you expect to see a lot of Purge the Foe. And the 2 enhancements here, the one gives you the rerolls I mentioned earlier, the other one gives you Ignore Cover. So we can stretch that 440 for our Land Speeder package to a clean 470. And then you will have 30 points extra spent to get Ignore Cover on your Hammer Strikes. And Ignore Cover on the Hammer Strike is obviously pretty good because the Hammer Strike doesn't benefit from his own rule. So yeah, if you have the points to spare and you want to take this, do it. Obviously, the Fulguris Task Force is really good. It is really good at supplementing a detachment like Reclamation Force, which has no support for vehicles or mobility or shooting, and it just gives you a way as an inroads to give you the Ignore Cover stuff with some extra support. You have a reactive move, you have an up-down. The up-down in particular, really good in this new mission set. Love it. Gladius we talked about. Iron Storm. Iron Storm is Purge the Foe. And this is your vehicle spam list. I have a theory. Maybe I will be proven wrong, but I do believe if you want to play your Gilliman 8 vehicles, shoot everything to death, Purge the Foe list, this would be your detachment. Not the Gladius, because priority assets is just the worst primary for this kind of list than the Ironstorm Spearhead. You will shoot people off the board. It will be crazy. It will be pretty good. I don't think you need to bring a lot of stuff in this list, actually. I think you take your Tech Marine or two with the enhancements you want, and you run like two Incursor squads for the +1, and maybe you will cleanse an objective with an Incursor squad. And other than that, you will just shoot. You will kill people with your stupid tanks, and it's insane. You can even bring something in addition. Maybe this is the spot where you take the scout detachment so you can get extra detection range on your opponent and then you shoot them to death with your big tanks. Yeah. Laborious Conclaves gives you access to Reconnaissance, which could be pretty decent if you want to play more MSU. And this is obviously no strats, but all of the psychic buffs. The most mainstream home as of right now is Reclamation Force, because Reclamation Force doesn't have a shooting buff, so getting the big Fusillade unit in there is just a good way to get some range damage into the list. And all of your melee units are pretty oath agnostic, so you don't have to have Oath of Moment. The second reason is the Wardens of Macragge are psychos, so your Titus super unit can have the -1 strength against incoming attacks, which is actually hilarious because it means if you get shot by strength 4, they wound you on 6s. Because the Titus unit doesn't have to have the higher strength thingy, which is pretty nice. You can even have a second, you can even put an advance and charge into any list with celerity. So maybe you have like a Gilliman list with Ironstorm and you still want to have one thing that can advance and charge. So maybe you just run like, I guess you can run Victrix, so it's a bit meh, but you could run an advance and charge Terminator squad or Blade Guard squad, just something. Yeah, obviously it's 1 DP, so you will see the Laborious Conclave a lot. Orbital Assault Force is taken hold, which is a bit strange to me because this army wants to be in deep strike and then come down. I think another primary would have been better here, but yeah, I don't play this detachment at all. I don't respect it all that much, but yeah, it gives you the rerolls on your deep strike stuff. You have some good strats, and that's what it is. Reclamation Force, here we go. This is my baby. It's taken hold, and this detachment is purpose built to make use of taken hold, because if you are on the objective, you are -1 to wound for as long as you control it, which means you want to control the objectives. Get your ancients in, get your battle line in, get your reavers in to sabotage your opponent. Just do your thing. Hold those objectives, get your buffs, +1 AP in combat, -1 to wound against anything that wants to hit you, and then obviously it's 2 points. So the two obvious ways to make this a bit more rounded is to add either the Librarius or the Fulguris to get some extra stuff. In my opinion, I slightly prefer the Fulguris Task Force to make the Rec Force a bit more rounded. You get some actual shooting into your list, and you can buff some units you would otherwise probably not bring, like Heavy Intercessors. If you can give Heavy Intercessors Ignore Cover, they shoot pretty hard, and they have long range. So one of your units that would only be holding objectives is now also a damage piece at range, which I pretty much like. On the other hand, Librarius makes all of your objective sitting units a lot harder to shift because of the -1 strength and because of the interaction against psychic guns I talked to you about. So if you bring Tigurius and you make with an ancient, so your Blade Guard squad is 16 OC, and your opponent wants to shoot you in cover, it's -2 to hit, -1 to wound, and if it's a psychic gun, it's still -1 to wound and a 4-up Filner Pain, and then you can also just turn on the reroll once to hit and wound, so your entire army doesn't need Oath, which means the Oath can go on the Fusillade unit to delete any big target, and then you can even put an Ancient into the Fusillade unit just to have an extra OC. There are so many things you can do. You can go up-down with Hellblasters, maybe. You can, yeah, with the Temporal Corridor. You just stay in Telepathy for the Ignore modifiers, and then you just up-down those modifier ignoring guys and just keep shooting, and that's what that is. Yeah. Pretty interesting. Then we have the Spear Point Task Force. That was the Land Raider detachment, right? Yeah, this one is bad. I now with all the nerfs, and good thing I don't want to play in a world with this. Stormlands is Disruption, which is not a popular primary, and it's 3 points, so you can't put anything into Disruption. Excuse me, into Stormlands. The way I see this list actually works pretty well, but you need to go back to what the Stormlands originally was, which is Gilliman, shooting, and a bunch of stuff. The way I played my Stormlands was I ran Gilliman, a combi lieutenant, Titus with company heroes, one intercessor squad, two incursor squads, one scout squad, uh, one Outrider squad, and then two Hammer Strikes, two Ballistas, and one Storm Raven, and also Assault Centurions. So that gave me, I think, 13 units in my list. Pretty decent. 12 of which can do actions. And yeah, it is just really fast. It is you are everywhere on the board. You have to fall back and shoot. You can the Storm Raven is so easy to move over terrain now. It can always just fly 14 inches everywhere. You can't go assault and auto advance 6 anymore, but now you can auto advance 6 if you really need to make it auto advance 9 and just use your outriders to contest an objective for your primaries, which the disruption primary really wants you to do. So don't count this out. I was a bit skeptical when I saw the field manual for myself, but I think Stormlands is actually pretty decent. Last but not least, we have the Subversion SS, which also gives you reconnaissance. It is the Scout detachment. I haven't found a use for it yet, but maybe in Iron Storm you combo this with your two Incursor squads just to make it easier to shoot your opponent. Basically, that's what that does. Last, we have the Vanguard Spearhead, which is also reconnaissance. The Vanguard Spearhead is pretty interesting at playing recon because you have your up-down, your stratagem, that is the reactive move upon getting charged, is currently completely broken because it didn't get errata yet. Which basically it says your opponent rolls a charge, and then they pick the target of the charge, and then you can move these 6 inches away, which is pretty straight because now you can see what your opponent rolled before you use the stratagem, which is pretty nuts. Don't expect this to work for that way for long, but hey, here are the problems with this. You can no longer turn one up down, so even if you have deep strikes, so the old Centurion thing that we lost, we also now lost for our Inceptors with the Bolters, the unit we started on the board. Can't do that anymore. And second, the +1 to hit and AP strat, that one might be a bit problematic because the Centurion combo kind of relies on them hitting on 2s. So you need to hit on 2s with the real 1s to get all of your twin last cannons into the target. And now, if you give yourself +1 to hit, you're now shooting into cover with -1 to hit. So thankfully it's 2 DP, so maybe you have to ally a Fulguris task force in to get those ignore cover speeders. But yeah, I think also the fact that the detachment rule was changed into cover is just whatever. I mean, it plays well into what the army wants to do with the recon, but I still think the Vanguard could have used some points drops on all of these units because now you are just vulnerable to turn 1 getting shoved because you don't have anything on the board, and that is pretty problematic. Now, with that said, that's my review for the MUNITORUM field manual. So overall, I think we have a lot of stuff to try. Keep in mind whenever you want to actually show pay those taxes and show your opponent what you have, or when you just play a third best in class just to not pay those extra points. Courage and honor, Battle Brothers, we march for McCraig.